I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. I will ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Thacker.
Present.
Councilmember Hayes.
Here.
Councilmember Herniman.
Here.
Councilmember Kaler.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Reesner.
Here.
And Councilmember Snee.
Present.
Thank you. Let the record show all 7 members of council are present this evening. At this time, I'd like to open a joint public hearing between Tiffin City Council and the Planning Commission.
Stand up at the podium so you can hear me. Thank you, Madam President, Mayor, Council. I know you've got a lot on your agenda, so I'll get right to it. I'm going to do a roll call for the joint planning hearing today here, and then tomorrow's meeting is at 3 p.m., same place here for that meeting and any discussion that may follow. Okay. Roll call. Mickey King, I would ask that you hold your hand up and say present. Thank you. Randy Schwartz.
Present.
Thank you. John Bain.
Present.
Thank you. Rod Morrison.
Present.
Thank you. Nick Dutro.
Present.
Lee Wilkinson.
Here.
And I've been told Jeremy Croy is not present. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. This public hearing is for the consideration of ordinance 2024-48 and ordinance zoning 79.506 acres of land, more or less owned by David J. Wagner and Alan T. Wagner. Trustees and Ann Forrest and Claire Forrest Jr., co-executors of the state of Martha Ann Forrest in the second ward of the city as Zone M-2 heavy industrial district compatible with adjacent land use and meeting requirements of the Tiffin City Charter and the codified ordinances, as well as ordinance 2024-49, an ordinance to enact residential infill development standards in the zoning code and amend sections 1167.03, 1169.03, 1181.01, and 1181.05 zoning code. At this time and place, anyone wishing to address council may direct their questions to myself. Okay. Seeing nothing, ordinance 24-48 and ordinance 2449 are referred to the Planning Commission. And at this time, I will close the public hearing. We do have a petition request, petition number 2024-03, vacating the alley off of Front Street running east-west between lot number 409 on the south and lot number 285 on the north and terminating at the Sandusky River, all in Hemmings resurvey in the 4th Ward of the City of Tiffin, Ohio. This petition request will be referred to the Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers Committee. Minutes from July 17, 2024, regular and committee of the whole meetings were distributed. Are there any questions, corrections, or deletions? Okay, seeing none, minutes will stand approved as presented. We are now under committee reports. Finance Committee, Councilmember Reesner.
No report, Madam President.
Thank you. Law and Community Planning, Councilmember Kaler.
Thank you, Madam President. The Law and Community Planning Committee met in City Chambers on July 8, 2024, starting at 5:15 p.m. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss Mayor's request for legislation number 24-30, Mayor's request for legislation number 24-31, the TMAC Wing project, as well as any other business to come before the committee. Attending were committee members John Kaler, John Hayes, and Dennis Snee. Also attending were Mayor Lee Wilkinson, Law Director Zachary Fowler, Councilmember Scott Herniman, Councilmember Aaron Jones, and Councilmember Kevin Reesner. City Engineer Matt Watson, Parks Director Bryce Kuhn. Attending from the public were Nick Consolo and Ryan Punyon. Councilmember Kaler started the meeting by addressing Mayor's request for legislation number 24-30, wherein the Mayor requested Council's approval to have legislation prepared and passed to accept bids for the wetlands project at Hedges Boyer Park. This project is fully funded by a grant from the state of Ohio. The wetlands project would consist of a break wall and grassland being installed on the sledding hill at Hedges Boyer Park. There would still be room for sledding in the wintertime. The wetlands would be primarily knee-high grass. Parks Director Bryce Kuhn is hoping to start construction in September or October, and therefore ask council to declare an emergency and to suspend council's 3 reading rule. Councilmember John Hayes moved to recommend that the law director draft legislation to accept bids for the wetlands project at Hedges Boyer Park, to declare an emergency, and to suspend council's 3 reading rule. Councilmember Dennis Snee seconded the motion. The motion carried with a vote of 3-0. Mayor's request for legislation number 24-31 asks the committee to recommend that City Council pass a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply for, accept, and enter into a Water Pollution Control Loan Fund, WPCLF, agreement on behalf of the City of Tiffin for the design of the Benner Interceptor CSO 9-13 and 15 inflow reduction and high-rate treatment projects. City Engineer Matt Watson clarified that he was seeking 3 separate resolutions, one authorizing a loan for each of the 3 projects. City Engineer Matt Watson also requested that council declare an emergency and suspend the 3 reading rule due to the time constraints for these projects to be completed. The cost for the design phase of the high-rate treatment project is $1,723,714. However, the loan for the high-rate treatment project through WPCLF includes a principal forgiveness policy. Therefore, the loan would be more like a grant than a loan that the city would actually have to pay back. The total cost for the construction of this project is approximately $19.5 million. Councilmember Dennis Snee moved to recommend that City Council pass a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply for, accept, and enter into a Water Pollution Control Fund agreement on behalf of the City of Tiffin for the design of the high-rate treatment project, to declare an emergency and suspend council's 3 reading rule. Councilmember John Hayes seconded the motion. The motion carried with a vote of 3-0. The cost for the design phase of the Benner Interceptor project is $1,612,712. There would be no principal forgiveness for this loan. However, the loan rate is very favorable and below market interest rates. This project would see the installation of new sewer pipes that are needed to control flow and to prevent the flow of sewage into the river. This is required by the EPA. The total cost for the construction of the project is approximately $25.8 million. Councilmember John Hayes moved to recommend that City Council pass a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply for, accept, and enter into a Water Pollution Control Fund agreement on behalf of the City of Tiffin for the design of the Benner Interceptor project, to declare an emergency and to suspend council's 3 reading rule. Councilmember Dennis Hayes seconded the motion. Dennis Snee seconded the motion. The motion carried with a vote of 3-0. The cost for the design phase of the CSO 9-13 and 15 inflow reduction project is $3,192,940.80. There would be no principal forgiveness for this loan. However, the loan rate is very favorable and below market interest rates. The project would see the installation of storm sewers and maintenance on existing sewer lines, such as point repair, spray application lining, full pipe replacement, and manhole rehabilitation. The total cost for the construction of the project is approximately $38.8 million. Councilmember Dennis Snee moved to recommend the City Council pass a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply for, accept, and enter into a Water Pollution Control Loan Fund agreement on behalf of the City of Tiffin for the design of the CSO 9-13 and 15 inflow reduction project, to declare an emergency and to suspend council's 3 reading rule. Councilmember John Hayes seconded the motion. The motion carried with a vote of 3-0. Next, the committee addressed the Tiffin Municipal Arts Committee TMAC Wing Project. The wing project would see the construction and placement of various wing-themed sculptures throughout the city of Tiffin. The sculptures would be designed by local artists. TMAC representatives Ryan Punyon and Nick Consolo addressed the committee. TMAC is requesting $32,000 in funds for the project. They suggested that the funds be taken from the city's Squirrel Fund. The Squirrel Fund, as it is informally known, is an endowment that the city of Tiffin created years ago. The endowment started with $10,000. There is currently a little over $30,000 in the fund. Certain questions were brought up by council members and members of city administration. Are we in support of the project? If we are in support, how do we want to fund it? Do we deplete the Squirrel Fund or use money from the general fund? How much oversight does the city want to have on the types of sculptures that will be installed? At what locations will the sculptures be installed, etc.? TMAC representatives indicated that they would get details to City Council as to concept art and sculpture locations. The committee took no further action on the issue. Mayor Lee Wilkinson expressed some concern about what TMAC was doing with excess funds. More specifically, he was concerned that TMAC had given excess funds to a nonprofit organization, Tiffin Foundation for the Advancement of the Arts, TFAA. His main concern is that when a nonprofit organization such as TFAA is given the funds, the city of Tiffin loses control over how that money is spent. Councilmember Kaler disclosed to the committee that he currently sits on the board of directors of TFAA. No further action was taken. With no other business to discuss, the meeting adjourned at 7:45 p.m. Thank you.
I promise I'll give you a break for a little while. Any questions on that report? Okay, thank you. Materials and equipment, Councilmember Jones.
No reports, Madam President.
Personnel and Labor Relations, Councilmember Hayes.
No report, Madam President.
Recreation and Public Property, Councilmember Snee.
No report, Madam President.
Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers, Councilmember Thacker.
No report, Madam President.
And Economic Development and Downtown Planning, Councilmember Herniman.
No report, Madam President.
Thank you. Does anyone see the need to schedule a committee of the whole meeting? Okay, we are now under reports of the officers. His Honor Mayor Lee Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam President. So last week, down at the park, Hedges Boyer Park, we had the Youth Fire Academy for kids aged 12 to 15, and they got to witness all kinds of interesting things. I was able to go down there for a couple days and watch. They got to witness the jaws of life cutting through a car. The life flight helicopter paid them a visit, and they learned how to intubate a patient, not a real life human being, but they had a dummy there. Insert an IV, apply a tourniquet, and all kinds of other things that they will need if they want to pursue life as a firefighter and EMT. This week is July 18th, coming up this Thursday. That's the third Thursday, that is Christmas in July. So be looking for the nutcrackers, which you'll see around town. And there is some kind of event, a scavenger hunt going along with that for fun. This is a fundraiser for the Operation Hallmark. The Operation Hallmark is a group of volunteers that put up the Christmas lights at no cost to the city, which is really nice. And our police and fire departments are also participating in that. So be sure to find their nutcrackers and take a look at that. And that's why the Christmas lights are on downtown this week. Street paving on Rebecca and Schonhart Street should be getting finished up this week and next. Following that, there will be additional street paving locations down by Charlotte Street and 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Streets. So those are on the list so that you're aware of those coming up. Aqua has projects scheduled to begin July 22nd on Melmore Street, and there may be some lane closures associated with that. I do have a couple of guests. I'd like to introduce first Fire Chief Rob Chappell, and he has some good news for us.
Thank you, Mayor, Madam President, members of council. Thank you for giving me a couple of minutes tonight to talk about. In your packet tonight, you will have seen a mayor's request for legislation 24-35 regarding a FEMA fire grant. I just wanted to provide some supporting details about that grant program and what it means to our fire department and for our city. So since 2001, the FEMA Assistance to Firefighter Grant has assisted fire departments in obtaining critically needed equipment, protective gear, emergency vehicles, training, and other resources necessary for fighting fire and protecting our public, all while trying to keep ourselves a little bit safe in the process. The Tiffin Fire Rescue Division has benefited on numerous occasions from this grant program, alleviating the need for funds from the city's general fund and capital budget. Each year, the federal government allocates funding for the AFG, and in the 2023 federal budget, $324 million was allocated for this year's grant cycle. With that $324 million, FEMA was expecting approximately 2,000 awards to be made from those funds. When the application period closed back in the spring, FEMA had received 7,962 applications, totaling $3.72 billion, approximately 4 times more requests than they intend to award, and all at the same time they're competing for 11.5 times more funding than what's available through the program. So just slightly competitive. For each of the past 2 grant cycles, we've applied for new self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBAs for short. We also call them air packs. That's what allows for us to be able to breathe nice, clean air, to push deeper into a smoke-filled environment, searching for victims that may be trapped while also extinguishing fire, and also basically eliminating most of the risk that we have for inhaling all those carcinogens and smoke from that environment. So our current equipment was purchased in 2013 and is now considered obsolete. A lot of the equipment in the fire service basically carries a 10-year lifespan, and then it's considered obsolete. We were kind of getting to the point where we were going to need to look at if we couldn't obtain funding for this, we were going to be going in and possibly proposing this for the 2025 capital budget needs. However, this past Friday, FEMA approved our grant request in their very first round of awards for the year, which is kind of awesome. So now it kind of falls to this body. If council elects to accept this grant award, the city will be responsible in our 2025 capital budget for $12,621.43, which is of the total equipment purchase. In turn, for our $12,600, FEMA will provide $252,428.57. So it's a 95 to 5% split for a project total of $265,050. This money will be used to purchase up to 30 SCBA units, which includes the backpack style harness, the 2 bottles per unit, and a face piece and regulator. We also intend to purchase 6 additional face pieces and regulators so that each member of our department will have a mask that has been fit tested for themselves specifically. So FEMA provides 30 days from the notice of the award, which again was this past Friday, in order for us to accept it. It is for this reason I joined the mayor in requesting this to be passed with an emergency and suspension of the 3 reading rule at the August 5th council meeting. And just wanted to reiterate that we're very excited to have been selected for this grant and that the prospects of having the new equipment here sometime next year. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you, Chief, and congratulations that all that hard work that you put in over the last couple of years, getting those grant applications filled out is finally paid off.
There's few things in life more enjoyable than filling out FEMA grant applications.
Thank you.
Oh, very good. So before I introduce my next guest, I just have a few words to say about that. Many of you may or may not have known Rich Focht personally. He served as a member of City Council, Council President, and President of the Seneca Industrial and Economic Development Corporation, SIDEC, for over 24 years. He worked as a project manager on the first Ellis Street Bridge rehab project that was constructed by Focht Brothers in 1979. During his illness recently, Rich remained dedicated to the community, often riding his electric bike around town, and one of his first stops was always to check in on the new Ellis Street Bridge, which was just recently reconstructed. Rich Focht's passing was a profound loss to Tiffin. but his numerous legacies will endure throughout the impact of his hard work, dedication, and love for the city. It is fitting and proper to honor Rich Focht's memory and his enduring contributions to the city of Tiffin by dedicating and renaming the Ellis Street Bridge in his honor. I propose that the bridge on Ellis Street shall hereby be dedicated and renamed as the Rich Focht Memorial Bridge. And I would like to introduce former Seneca County Commissioner Mike Kirshner to say a few words if you would like.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. President Boyle, City Council members, guests, I want to thank you for allowing me to take some time to present this people's petition. The petition had over 125 signatures, and it was only restrained by the time we had it out there. There could have been many, many more. The purpose tonight is to ask that the Ellis Street Bridge be named in the honor and the memory of Richard A. Focht. First, I want to give special thanks to Stacy Wilson for wordsmithing the petition. Also, thanks to all those who were able to get petitions around: Marcia Focht, Aaron Montz, Steve Schuff, Jim Klein, Panyan Bookstore, Jeff out at Westgate Barbers. I also want to advise council that Senator Reinecke, Representative Click, and all three commissioners endorsed this action and asked this council to go forward. I would describe Rich as a man with a servant's heart. I can't describe anyone any kinder than that. He served his country, he served his church, he served his family, and he served the citizens of Tiffin and Seneca County for more than a generation. The language in the petition itself, which you guys all have a copy of, lists the many accomplishments that he's had. He would be the first to tell you that it's amazing how much can be done if you don't care who gets the credit. Rich got many things done with little praise or acknowledgement, but that's the way that he wanted it. He would tell you that his biggest accomplishment and the thing that he's most proud of were his life with Marcia, watching his kids and grandkids grow up, and being able to be with them for a number of years. So I ask you to positively consider the request before you and hopefully approve naming of the Ellis Street Bridge in the honor and memory of Rich Focht. Thanks for your time very much. I think we might have somebody else have something to say.
Good evening, Madam President, Mayor, members of council. My name is Rich Klein. I served with Rich Focht on City Council for many years. And just to echo what Mike said, you know, Mike held several titles throughout his life. He had a servant's heart, but those titles: soldier, entrepreneur, president of SIDEC, council member. You know, he served as interim president. He shares that honor and distinction with you and I, President Boyle. And so, you know, another thing that wasn't talked about a lot, Rich actually served on a board for Seneca County Chaplain Corps. He and I served on that board together. That, you know, part of the mission of that organization was to help addicts in recovery. And, you know, it's things like that, you know, working behind the scenes to help people, as Mike said, you know, working towards things that, you know, wasn't going to get you a lot of recognition or fanfare, but Rich was always there working in the background to better the community, better the citizens here. And the most important title is that I got to call him friend, and I knew him a very long time. And, you know, as I started my journey on city council and he was president of SIDEC, he spent some time with me, a lot of time more than he probably should have, just educating me about what was going on in the city so that I could hit the ground running. I'm just forever grateful for the friendship I had with him and the mentorship that he provided to me as a young man coming up. And so I just strongly encourage you to vote in favor of this petition. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? We're still under the mayor's report here, so I'm going to respectfully say that concludes my report. We'll continue with the reports, and then there will be motions coming up in a little bit, and then we'll hear from City Council.
Okay, thank you. Clerk of Council Ann Forrest.
No report, Madam President.
You, Director of Finance Kathy Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the June financial report for you this evening. And also there are a couple of ordinances that you'll be voting on tonight. Ordinance 24-46 is the third reading, and that is for the firefighter position to appropriate funds in the budget. And we also had suspension on ordinance 2456 for the wetlands project for Hedges Boyer Park. We want to make sure that we are able to keep everything moving there, so we want to make sure that, that's why we asked for suspension there, so that we can meet all the necessary deadlines. Ordinance 2457, we were, as we said in committee of the whole, we are moving budget around from one department to another, from Director of Communications to Mayor's budget, so that we can start looking for an administrative assistant. And then 24-58 is an Ohio EMA grant that we want to make sure that we're able to get, and that had a time limit as well, so that's why we're asking for suspension there. Okay, the financial report for June 2024. Total receipts for the month were $4,288,384.03. Total expenses for the month were $4,798,358.90. The general fund unencumbered balance is $5,439,314.78. Income tax receipts for June 2024 were $1,144,819.59. When comparing that to income tax receipts between June 24 and 23, we were up $125,536.26. And annually, year-to-date, income tax receipts are up 7.25%. The 0.25% portion of income tax receipts that was transferred into Fund 215 for public streets for June was $141,103.57. The unexpended balance for all funds is $39,282,253.60, which is the same as the bank balances for the same time period. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to accept the Finance Director's report for month-end bank reconciliation for month ending June 30th, 2024.
Thank you. There's a motion to accept the Finance Director's report and bank reconciliation for the month of June. Is there a second? Councilmember Snee.
I second the motion, please.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Director of Law, Zach Fowler.
Yes, I just have a short report, Madam President. So the end of the month was some legislative activity at the Ohio General Assembly, and there was a, the right one, House Bill 47 that passed. And I'm not sure yet if the governor signed it, but I'm sure it's coming. But the impact here is on the city is for at the parks or really any place that there's like a ball field or a sport activity. There's now a requirement that a defibrillator be at each of those locations. So we'll have out at, say, Hedges Boyer Park, at ball fields, at the pool, we'll have to have defibrillators in place at those locations. So talking with Bryce Kuhn about those locations, we're still to determine exactly where those will be placed. The bill itself will be effective in 90 days, and there's no real other delay to it. So we have a couple of months to determine locations, to purchase defibrillators and get them in place. So we're still sorting out details, but just wanted you to be aware because there will be some, I'm sure, requests for additional funds to purchase those items. Other than that, that's all I have to report.
Thank you. We are now under written communications.
We have Mayor's request for legislation, number 24-32, ordinance updates.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-32 is assigned to the Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers Committee.
And Mayor's request for legislation number 24-33, amending the easement for 11 Indian Lane.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-33 is also assigned to the Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-34, funding for skating rink.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-34 is assigned to the Finance Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-35, FEMA fire grant.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-35 is also assigned to the Finance Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-36, the Ohio EMA grant agreement.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-36 is prepared tonight as ordinance 24-58.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F24-37 to amend the 2024 budget ordinance 23-94 to appropriate funds into the police and parks budgets.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F24-37 is prepared tonight as ordinance 24-55.
Finance Director's request for legislation number 24-38 to amend the 2024 budget ordinance 23-94 to reduce funds in the Director of Communications budget and increase funds in the Mayor's budget.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F24-38 is prepared tonight as ordinance 24-57.
And we have the letter from the Director of Law to members of council and the Planning Commission regarding the zoning code amendments.
Thank you. This letter will be held on file in the clerk's office.
And that concludes the written communications.
Perfect. Thank you. We are now under oral communications. Anyone wishing to address council may step to the podium, sign in, and direct their questions to myself. Okay. Seeing none, we are now under motions. Councilmember Herniman.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion that the city of Tiffin rename and dedicate the Ella Strait Bridge in honor of Richard A. Focht Jr. for his dedicated service to their city and our community for years and years.
Thank you. There's a motion to have the law director prepare legislation to dedicate the Ella Strait Bridge in honor of Rich Focht for his dedication and service to the city. Is there a second? Councilmember Reesner.
I'll second the motion, Madam President.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Law director.
I would just add in for you all that when we did this previously for former Mayor Homan, we did this through an ordinance. In that ordinance, we just provided information about Mayor Homan. If you have anything for Rich Focht, please feel free to email it to me, before the next council meeting. I'll incorporate that into the draft. I'll try and route it around as well so you guys all see it. So that way if anyone has any additions or corrections, you can let me know.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Any other motions this evening? Okay, we are now under resolutions and ordinances.
We have resolution number 2024-31, introduced by John Kaler, a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply for, accept, and enter into a water pollution control loan fund, WPCLF, agreement on behalf of the city of Tiffin for the design of wastewater facilities involving CSO Basins 9 to 13 and 15 inflow reduction project, designating a dedicated repayment source for the loan and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of Resolution 24-31. Councilmember Kaler.
Madam President, I move to suspend council's 3-reading rule due to certain time constraints involved regarding this resolution.
And passage.
And passage.
Okay. There's a motion to suspend council's 3-reading rule and immediate passage of Resolution 24-31. Is there a second? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Hardeman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Resolution 24-31 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Resolution number 2024-32, introduced by John Kaler, a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply for, accept, and enter into a water pollution control loan fund, WPCLF, agreement on behalf of the city of Tiffin for the design of wastewater facilities involving the Benner Interceptor project, designating a dedicated repayment source for the loan and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of Resolution 24-32. Councilmember Kaler.
Madam President, I move to suspend council's 3 reading rule and for immediate passage of Resolution 2024-32 due to certain time constraints.
Thank you. There is a motion to suspend council's 3 reading rule and immediate passage of Resolution 24-32. Is there a second? Councilmember Snee.
I second the motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Resolution 24-32 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Resolution number 2024-33, introduced by John Kaler, a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply for, accept, and enter into a water pollution control loan fund, WPCLF, agreement on behalf of the city of Tiffin for the design of wastewater facilities involving the high-rate treatment project, designating a dedicated repayment source for the loan and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of Resolution 24-33. Councilmember Kaler.
Madam President, I move to suspend council's 3 reading rule and for immediate passage of Resolution 2024-33.
Thank you. There is a motion to suspend council's 3 reading rule and immediate passage of Resolution 24-33. Is there a second? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Resolution 24-33 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2024-45, introduced by John Kaler, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property on Water Street.
Thank you. This is the third reading of Ordinance 24-45. You're up again. Yes, Councilmember Kaler.
Madam President, I move for passage of ordinance 2024-45.
Thank you. There is a motion for passage of Ordinance 24-45. Is there a second? Councilmember Reesner.
I'll second, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Herniman.
Yeah, for this, the acquisition of the property is the plan is to put a high rate treatment waste facility there on that property, and it'll reduce the cost of the entire sewer project very significantly with not having to lay as much pipe across the city and such and everything. And so.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Law Director.
Just for your all knowledge, the contract for this will still have some contingency in there that have to be met. Some of them are typical to real estate purchase, like they have to give us clean title, remove any liens, but we also have ones for an environmental study, which is to begin soon, as well as contingent on approval from the Ohio EPA. Just so you're aware, next Monday at 6 p.m. Over at the library, the EPA is doing a public hearing on the project. You're welcome to attend if you like, but just for your knowledge, that's going on. So if any of those contingencies, though, aren't met, that would stop the contract unless we brought it back to you. So just so you know.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, we will vote on the passage.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Hardeman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Got that one right. Snee.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-45 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2024-46, introduced by John Hayes. An ordinance amending the 2024 budget, ordinance 23-94, to appropriate funds into the fire department budget.
Thank you. This is the third reading of ordinance 24-46. Councilmember Hayes.
You had motion for passage of ordinance 2024-46.
Thank you. There is a motion for passage of ordinance 24-46. Is there a second? Councilmember Herniman.
I'll second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Hayes.
This is a budget ordinance for funds for the fire department to hire an additional Tiffin Fire and Rescue staff member, and this will continue into the 2025 budget, that extra staff person.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, we will vote on the passage.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-46 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2024-55, introduced by Kevin Reesner. An ordinance amending the 2024 budget ordinance 23-94 to appropriate funds into the police budget and Parks Department budget.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-55.
Ordinance number 2024-56, introduced by John Kaler. An ordinance authorizing and directing the city administrator to prepare plans and specifications, advertise for and receive bids, recommend and execute a contract for the development of a wetlands at Hedges Boyer Park, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-56. Councilmember.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. No worries. Councilmember Kaler.
Madam President, I move to suspend council's three reading rule and for immediate passage of ordinance 2024-56.
Thank you. There's a motion to suspend council's three reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 24-56. Is there a second? Councilmember Reesner.
I'll second, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Law Director.
This project does need to be approved quickly, so just to reiterate what I said, Committee of the Whole, this timeline on this grant, the project needs completed by the end of this year.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-56 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2024-57, introduced by Kevin Reesner. An ordinance amending the 2024 budget ordinance 23-94 to reduce funds from the Director of Communications budget, appropriate funds into the mayor's budget, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-57. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President, and I move for immediate passage of ordinance 2024-57, suspending City Council's three reading rule.
Thank you. There is a motion to suspend council's three reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 24-57. Is there a second? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Reesner.
Just point of information, this is for a funds transfer from the former Director of Communications position to a admin assistant position.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we will vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-57 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2024-58, introduced by Kevin Reesner, an ordinance authorizing all actions necessary to accept the Ohio Emergency Management Agency State Disaster Relief Program, State Public Assistant Grant, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-58. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for immediate passage of ordinance 2024-58, suspending City Council's 3-reading rule.
Thank you. There is a motion to suspend council's 3-reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 24-58. Is there a second? Councilmember Herniman.
I'll second that, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Reesner.
Point of information, this is the, to meet the July 31 deadline for this grant. And as always with the grants, good work to everybody for getting grants for the
Thank
city.
you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we will vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-58 passes with a vote of 7-0.
And that concludes the legislation.
Thank you. We are now under other business. Is there any other business to come before council this evening, Councilmember Thacker?
Yes, I have 2 street sidewalk sewer committee meetings to announce. Both are on July 29th. The first is at 5:15 PM on site at 34 Front Street to discuss petition 2024-03 and any other business that comes before that committee. And then quickly following that, at 5:45, same day, at council chambers to discuss mayor's request for legislation 24-32, 24-33, and any other business that comes before that committee.
Thank you. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to announce a Finance Committee meeting to discuss, well, actually, the meeting's going to be on Friday, July 19th at 5:15 PM, City Council Chambers. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss Mayor's request for legislation 24-34, the funding for the skating rink, and the Mayor's request for legislation 24-35, the FEMA fire grant. And any other business that would come before council, the committee.
You got it. All right. Any other business to come before council this evening?
I do have a
Yes.
question for the law director, if that's okay. We have some tabled legislation, so I didn't know if everyone knew the status of that or what was our next steps on the tabled legislation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Those are the zoning amendments, so those, council can't take those up until the planning commission meets, so that's tomorrow. After they meet, they'll send recommendations. We receive it at the next council meeting in August, and then it can be taken off the table.
Anything else to come before council this evening? All right, seeing none, we can adjourn. Thank you.
Good job for what you thought was going to be a crazy.
It was a quirky meeting.